It all began, like so many things during my misspent youth, at the movies. At a James Bond film, actually. Thunderball with Sean Connery had just been re-released, and I was in the front row, totally engrossed in watching the final fight scene between Bond and Emilio Largo, when the tracer bullets flew overhead and began thwacking into the movie screen. At least, they looked like tracers. They were white, and you could hear them hit. Thwack, thwack, thwack. And then one of the bullets hit me. It hit me in the back of my neck and stung like hell. The bullet lodged in my collar, so I fished it out. It wasn't a real bullet. Instead, it was round, white, some kind of bean or pea. Someone was shooting peas at the movie screen. I forgot about James Bond and turned in my seat in an effort to find out what was going on, when I heard two familiar voices say, "There's W! Get him!" Carter and Davidson. Davidson and Carter. Two losers I knew well. Too damn well. But I had no sooner registered their identities when I found myself peppered with shot. Okay, with peas. And I had to hit the deck to roll around on the floor with the candy wrappers, buttered popcorn, and cigarette butts. By now, the film had ended and the lights had come up on a scene of total chaos. The entire audience, and it was a packed house that night, were on their feet, screaming and swearing, while hundreds of white peas lay piled at the base of the screen. Spent ammunition. I did what I did best in these situations. I beat it. I was out the back door and a block away from the cinema when I heard two voices calling, "Hey, W, wait up!" It was Davidson and Carter. Carter was a fat, soft, babyish guy with a perpetually stunned look, while Davidson was a blonde Satan, shit disturber written all over his face. They looked like choir boys, but were accomplished vandals and troublemakers. "That was yous guys?" I said, pointing an accusing finger at the pair. "Us?" Carter said with assumed innocence. "Never mind the act," I said with some asperity. "What the hell were you guys doing?" "This," Davidson said, handing me a long plastic tube like a large drinking straw, plus a paper bag filled with white peas or beans. "Pea shooters," I said in disgust. "Pea shooters," they both said proudly. For those who have never had the misfortune to encounter one, a pea shooter is a toy blowgun, like a long plastic drinking straw, used for shooting, via blowing, dried peas or beans. And they can shoot hard, too. "You mean to tell me you caused all that carnage with that? With a couple of pea shooters?" I said scornfully, and they both laughed. "We were up in the balcony," Davidson said. I shook my head. "You guys are what, 14 or 15, almost old enough to drive, and you're playing with pea shooters?" Not wanting to be associated with such immaturity, I turned on my heel and walked away, and got shot in the back of the neck. Again. I was determined to avoid those losers in future, and I should have stuck to my decision. A few nights later, I was walking home from a downtown donut hole. Okay, a donut shop. when I saw Davidson and Carter skulking up the back fire escape of a building fronting on Lakeshore Road. Lakeshore Road, the mainest street in town. I should have kept going. I should have. But I followed them out of curiosity. I found them lying on their bellies in their winter coats. This happened in March. And they were staring over the edge of the roof. Across the street, directly opposite, were the glass windows of a huge supermarket. I noticed they had their pea shooters and a sack of peas with them, so I had a pretty good idea of what they were going to do. Still, I said, "What are you arseholes up to, eh?" They both jumped out of their skin, showing they were up to no good. "You're going to shoot those things, those beans, at the store window, ain't ya? Ain't ya?" They didn't answer me, but just smiled at one another, which showed me I was right. "Well, I'm out of here then," I said. And I really did mean to go. But I didn't. Bad decision. Really bad decision. Carter and Davidson filled their big mouths with peas and began firing them at the store window across the way. Thwack! 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 Through the store window, we could see the staff and customers looking around, trying to figure out what was going on. Eventually, one of the clerks, wearing the standard issue black shoes, black pants, white shirt, clip-on tie, came out to look, and Davidson and Carter gave him both barrels. Stung by peas, the clerk danced around like a marionette riding a jackhammer before fleeing back into the store. I was just getting up to leave when the squad car pulled up in front of the supermarket. I hit the deck and crawled forward to where Carter and Davidson were already taking aim, their cheeks puffed out with beans and ready to open fire. "Don't you dare!" I pleaded. "Don't you guys dare!" Two cops got out of the cruiser. I knew them both, and they both knew me, even though I hadn't been in any trouble. Well, any serious trouble. One of the cops was pretty fat. Too many donuts from Tim Hortons, I guess. And he had just waddled over to stare at the pool of white beans on the sidewalk in front of the window, while the second cop was just getting out of the car when Carter and Davidson opened fire, both barrels. Thwack, 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 thwack. The beans ricocheted off the window and off the side of the police car. The cop standing by the car grabbed his neck as he dived back inside, while Fatso blundered about at high speed, smacking his arms and legs and big belly as if swatting invisible bees. Davidson and Carter were howling with laughter and high-fiving themselves, so I knocked their heads together. "Be quiet, you guys," I hissed. And that's when we heard it. Heard them. Sirens. Multiple sirens. Sirens converging from several different directions. We could see the red flashing lights of the approaching cop cars as we jumped down the fire escape and looked around for someplace to hide. I dived into a hedge, and then someone else dived in, kicking me in the head. It was Davidson, and he was still laughing. "Be quiet, you fool. You'd better hope they don't use police dogs to find us," I gasped. And then I added, "Where's Carter?" Of course, he didn't know. No, didn't know. We lay under the hedge for half an hour, and it was as cold as hell. Several cop cars raced past, but luckily they weren't searching on foot. Eventually, I crawled out of my place of refuge and stiffly made my way back to Tim's. A passing cruiser slowed as it passed me, but then, to my relief, it moved on. "You're back," Tess the counter girl said as I entered the donut shop. "Shh," I snapped. "What's all the excitement out there?" she said. And when I shrugged my shoulders, she laughed and said, "Oh, you know. Later, when Carter and Davidson joined me, she gave me a knowing smile. "Way to go, guys," I whispered. "I hope you ditched those pea shooters." They had, but they still seemed pleased with what they had done. And then Carter suddenly said, "You know about the night floaters, eh?" Floating heads, known as night floaters or floaters, were a paranormal phenomena afflicting our town. The nickname referred to the ability of certain beings to enter a trance state in which they could detach their heads from the trunks of their bodies, the heads then being able to fly or float at will. They were then said to attack unsuspecting victims, biting them and sometimes even killing them. "They're said to hang out at the old silo off the 4th line," Davidson said. "We're planning a visit to try our luck shooting floating heads." "Wanna come?" Carter chortled. No way. No way I was doing anything as dangerous as that. No way I was going with them. But, in the end, I did. Back during my misspent youth, I had 2 friends. Wait. Let me rephrase that. I had 2 acquaintances, Carter and Davidson. Davidson and Carter, who, at the age of 14 or 15, had managed to discover the pea shooter. Yes, that's right, the lowly pea shooter, which they had used to disrupt a movie, prank a supermarket, and finally to attack the police. Which was a bad idea. A very bad idea. What's a pea shooter, you say? Well, for those who have never had the misfortune to encounter one, a pea shooter is a toy blowgun, like a long plastic drinking straw, used for shooting, via blowing, dried peas or beans. And they can shoot hard, too. Carter and Davidson. Davidson and Carter. Carter was a fat, soft, babyish kind of guy, with a perpetually stunned look, while Davidson was a blonde Satan with "shit disturber" written all over his face. They looked like choir boys, but they were accomplished vandals and troublemakers. I had avoided them since the night they decided to bean the cops. I mean, attack the cops. Pea shoot the cops. Anyways, you know what I mean. But it was also the night they mentioned going out to the silo to hunt night floaters. What are the night floaters? Floating heads, known as night floaters or floaters were a paranormal phenomena afflicting our town. The nickname referred to the ability of certain individuals to enter a trance state in which they could detach their heads from the trunks of their bodies, the heads then being able to fly or float at will. They were said to attack unsuspecting victims, biting them, and sometimes even killing them. "They're said to hang out at the silo off the 4th line," Davidson said. "We're planning a visit to try our luck shooting floating heads." "Wanna come?" Carter chortled. No way. No way I was doing anything as dangerous as that. No way was I going with them. Which is how I found myself walking the train tracks out to the 4th line on a chilly April evening. We walked in silence, largely because I had given up trying to talk them out of it. My own motives confused me. In my heart, I truly believed in the night floaters. Hell, I'd had encounters with them throughout my childhood. But I think I was hoping we wouldn't find anything when we reached the silo, which meant I could stop believing in them, and that I could finally be free. Free from terror. In short, I was confused, but not my companions. "When you see the head floating your way, shoot just in front of it, so it'll fly into the peas," Davidson lectured Carter. But Carter wasn't listening to him. Instead, to me, he said, "Is it true the floaters can walk around without their heads? That their bodies can walk around without their heads, like?" "I've heard that, but I haven't seen that," I said. "How do they do that?" Carter persisted. "As if I know," I said rather tartly. "Is it true they strip butt naked before going into their trance state?" This time it was Davidson who wanted to know, which shows the mentality of those two clowns. We left the tracks just past the 4th line and cut across the dead brown grass in the direction of the silo. We could see it standing in the moonlight. And yeah, it was a moonlit night, maybe even a full moon. We could see it standing in the moonlight, a sentinel of leprous, weathered concrete, standing amongst the ruins of a barn in the middle of a field which was fringed with thick trees, and which was only a few hundred yards from the Queen Elizabeth Highway. Tonight, the place looked deserted. "There's no one here," Carter said, and I could hear the disappointment in his voice. "Maybe they don't exist," I said. And yeah, I was trying to kid myself. "Let's check out the foundations," Davidson added, and I could tell he was disappointed too. The remains of the foundation had a roof over them, probably the floor of the old barn. Underneath this floor was a dark space, probably where they stored the grain back when the farm was active. And it was in that dark space that we found the bodies. There were 4 of them, 2 men and 2 women, lying fully dressed on the dirt floor, all of them headless. Headless! They looked like store mannequins without heads, and they didn't appear to be breathing. "So they really do exist," I said bitterly. "I was truly hoping we would find nothing, and then I could pretend the night floaters weren't really real, and that what I had witnessed as a child had simply been my imagination. But here they were. The night floaters were real. The night floaters are real." Carter almost choked. Are they, dead? They're in a trance state, I said. That's why they're not breathing. Davidson, who had the flashlight, was down on his hands and knees, and he was going through their pockets. What are you doing? I snapped at him. Looking for money. What else? Davidson said, not stopping what he was doing. But that's stealing, I said. Who cares? They're night floaters. I care, I shouted. Stop that right now. I was so angry, I was ready to fight Davidson. But it never came to that. Instead, Carter screamed. 4 heads, 4 floating heads, hovered several feet off the ground, just outside the gap where we had entered the foundation. They just hung there, staring at us with their red glowing eyes. Their faces all had a similar look, thin, pinched, pale, their long hair greasy and disheveled. In short, they were dirty looking. Davidson yelled, "Watch out!" as a female hand with chipped fingernails grabbed my shoulder. The headless bodies had risen from the dirt floor and were just reaching out to grab us. 2 of them, a male and female, had entrapped Carter, who was now in their clutches. I screamed, "Run!" at the top of my lungs, and made a mad dash through the floating heads. Somehow I made it to the woods, and the whole time I had one of the ugly female heads flying after me and snapping her jaw like she was trying to bite me. I ran through the thickets in order to elude her, only to have the sharp branches tear at my skin and clothes. I was terrified of losing an eye, but I was even more terrified of the witchy night floater. Somehow I made it out to the road, staggering out onto the busy 4th line, heedless of traffic. A horn blared. I stood like a deer, transfixed by a pair of bright headlights. A voice I recognized yelled, "What are you trying to do, asshole?" It was a guy from my high school. I ran to his 72 Le Mans crying, Hey man, hey, can you give me a ride, eh? I got some guys after me." Which was true. I just didn't try to explain that the guys that were after me were night floaters. As for Carter and Davidson, I hoped they had made it out. I guess that didn't make me much of a friend. But hey, they brought it on themselves. And for a while, it actually looked like they hadn't made it. For starters, they didn't show at school for a few days, and when they returned, they seemed changed somehow. I finally caught up with them in the smoking area and said, "I thought the floaters had got you guys for sure." "We were sure they got you," Carter said, although I didn't catch the significance of that remark at the time. They were definitely giving me the cold shoulder, although I wasn't exactly sure why. Were they pissed off because I took off and left them? As if they wouldn't have done the same to me. Still, if they did want to hang out with me, I figured I'd survive. At least, that's what I thought. I was home in bed, in that twilight zone between sleep and wakefulness, when I heard something tapping against my bedroom window, which was on the 4th floor of our apartment building. Something tapping, like peas or beans. I threw open my bedroom window, and in the moonlight, I saw 2 heads floating 40 feet above the ground. One head had a fat babyish face with a stunned look, while the other head was that of a blonde Satan who looked like a real shit disturber. They both had pea shooters dangling from the sides of their mouths, from the sides of their grinning maws. Carter and Davidson. Davidson and Carter. Night floaters. Hey, W, want to come out and play? Want to come out and join us? The moral of the story: it's all fun and games till someone loses a head. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the night floaters, werewolves, and the black-eyed children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,500 subs in 2022. Till midnight. Cheers. Pictures used in today's video, courtesy of Pix Here, that's PX Here, while the music was the classic Lightless Dawn by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. Thank you for listening.